The NBA playoffs have been a lot of fun to watch. Why can't we watch NBA players play like this all year round? Ideas of ways we can fix the NBA next on Goode Sports. Do you long for the way the NBA used to be played? Players used to play for the right reasons. They played to win. Teams hated each other. It was fun basketball to watch, and I think rivalries began and continued because of it. We're going to talk today about how to fix the NBA and get that passion back in the game. My name is Randy Goode, and I am joined along with Trent Sneed, and I'm also joined behind the scenes with Cameron Harkleroad. Thank you guys for joining us. Trent, how you doing?
So far, so good today.
Good.
We'll see how we get into these topics.
Well, this will be fun. We got some creative ideas, and we'll see what people think. If they agree with it, if they don't agree with it, you guys can always write comments in there, and it's actually fun to watch. If you like certain things, write in there. If you have maybe some better ideas, Cameron behind the scenes is also joining us. And Cameron, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Randy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's gonna be interesting. So I'm going to go up with my top 10 ways, not in order, but top 10 ways we can fix the NBA. And then we'll just do one at a time, and then we'll get your guys' input on it. So this all stems from, for me personally, I've been watching, the NBA for a long time. And I used to just love, you could watch the 15th game of the season, whatever it was, and they were all in, the passion they were playing. Now you watch a game, and in the last 2 minutes, you might see teams try, or in the playoffs, but you don't see them trying throughout the season. It's kind of been a little discouraging and disgusting to watch, if you ask me. Playoffs are different, and it is fun to watch. So what's your perception, Trent, of what you've seen in the NBA over the years?
To be honest with you, I didn't grow up loving the NBA. I probably didn't start actually watching until I got interested in actually playing basketball. And then you start to play basketball in your early years, 12, 13 years old, and I then started to watch basketball to follow that. And of course, that's when I feel like NBA 2K got pretty big, and then now we're playing the games, on PS4, and that's also about the age I was when online started becoming a thing, so then you could actually play with your friends online. Anyways, all that being said, I feel like that was probably the highlight of my life for NBA, and the cool thing about the NBA at that time is it really inspired you to go back and look at the older years, right?
Yeah.
So, I was a huge fan of Scottie Pippen growing up. I always thought, like, you have the Batman to the Robin, you got the Michael Jordan to the Scottie Pippen, and I always thought that the Robin characters were probably the ones that I connected most with growing up. And it's hard to see the NBA where it's at now. And, I think the difficult thing is, for many years, I was the type of guy that watched almost every basketball game, for a short period of time. Obviously, life's busy. There's 70-something games in basketball, right? And it's difficult to kind of attach to those games these days. And I think the hard thing is I don't know. There was you used to put on the game on a Monday or Tuesday night, and, you had nothing better to do. You were coming home from probably practice or something along those lines. And you put the game on, you just saw players, I don't know, playing more passionately.
Yeah.
And it's just become difficult in these last couple of years. You're just not seeing the same effort being put in through the regular season. It's just weird. I mean, I feel like, honestly, not to talk about my favorite team, the Miami Heat, but I think they're a perfect example. I mean, they just dragged the chain and ball along all season long. They played good enough to get to the 8th seed, and it's almost worked out for them to win the NBA championship
Right.
twice now.
Yeah.
There's no good reason why a team should just be able to get that
Coast
to an 8th seed and then get in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw it with LeBron many years. Even in Cleveland, there was years he wasn't a high seed,
Right.
and then he just goes on to win the NBA Finals. Doesn't really matter. The Warriors, they never were really ever a high seed unless the one year that were there. What was it, 73 and whatever.
Yeah.
So you just for most years, you're just not gonna look at a team during the regular season and be like, oh, I'm really excited about this basketball game. The only time you ever really get excited anymore is if there's a rivalry and you actually expect the players to play. And even at that, I mean, it's so slim to none that you're like,
Well, and rivalries now are not the same as they used to be. When they used to play, they hated each other, truly hated each other. And so now it's, oh man, I lost. Hey, let's join teams next year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not the competitiveness that they used to have. And so it's just all different and changed. So let's start off. I'm going to go with my first thing that I would do to help make the NBA more palatable. And anyway, I think starting off is stop the incentive to tank. If you want to keep fans engaged, if you want to keep teams engaged, I think the best thing you can do is right now you have the lottery system, and the worst team gets the most ping pong balls, and they've tried to do a little bit to change that. But I think if you make it an even playing field, and if you're the 10th worst team or the worst team in the league, it doesn't matter. Everybody has an equal share because players are tanking, teams are tanking. They stop playing. I paid, let's just say, a lot of money. I flew my daughter Grace. We went to LA. We watched the Lakers, and I watched Golden State play. The top 7, and we had great seats. This is the most I've ever spent by a long margin on a game. She got to watch her Golden State Warriors play. My Lakers, the top 7 players, none of them played because they were tanking.
Yeah.
They were all out, all injured. And, that's the way the NBA. So I would stop that, and I would make it an even system. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's definitely an interesting thing to talk about. I mean, we look at like the NFL draft, which is where you really just tank to get the worst pick at that point.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is the best solution to fix the whole thing, but I do agree. I mean, there's no real incentive especially for these guys that are making millions of dollars a year.
Right.
Why go out and play hard at the end of the season just to still end up with, a worse draft pick at that point? Do we actually know what year the lottery started? Has it been since the whole NBA? Or is it
that I do not know. I mean, it's been going on forever. Patrick Ewing, I think, was picked in 84, 83 or whatever. I mean, they did it a little bit differently because Larry Bird was actually picked with the Boston Celtics the year before he got drafted. And so there's been different things, and they used to do more rounds, and rounds have changed over periods of time. But what you don't want to do is have fans, 20 games into the season rooting for your team to lose.
Yeah.
And that kind of stinks. And so you want them to keep winning. So you got to build in some form of incentive program to have them make the playoffs. And if everybody has an equal playing field, you want them to keep winning. You always want your fans to keep wanting your teams to win.
Yeah.
So
well, I mean, you got to look at this too, right? This is another. I mean, I know this is going to be another topic for us, but you also have to think about if the season wasn't so long,
right?
You probably don't have as much of a problem.
Yep.
Because the problem is let's say you're 50 games into the season and you got 20 games left to play. Mm-hmm. You may already know that you're not going to be anywhere near the top.
Right.
And you're like, let me just tank this bad boy out.
Yep.
Right? If you lose 30 out of your 50 games to start the season, you're probably just going to keep on tanking at that point.
Yeah.
Because you're like, at this point, we know we're not making the playoffs. We're not going to make the play-in game. We might as well just see what type of draft pick we can get.
Yeah.
We'll give, some of our young guys that we're more excited about, we're going to give them more time off than usual, right? Mm-hmm. We're going to game management, right?
Yeah.
Or load management, sorry, these kids, because we like them and we think they're going to be stars. So, we're going to load manage these guys maybe a little bit more than we usually would, right? We'll pull people out earlier in the fourth quarter. There's no reason or incentive to get these guys to play harder, especially when 20 games out that you're nowhere near the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, okay, so that leads into the second one. And the second thing that I would say is you give incentive by paying players more money. This is a massive billions and billions of dollars industry. So you pay them more to make the playoffs. This year, I think they got $30,000 per player in the first round. That's not a lot of incentive with what they're making right now. I would raise that significantly. And you can also raise how much money people make based on, even if you don't make the playoffs, you could even, by positioning, you get more. So even if you go from the 20th team to the 18th place team or whatever, where you're not making the playoffs, maybe you give them more money, and incentivize the players to continue to rise, even if they're 10 games out, because you still have fans. They're still wanting to go watch their teams play. And the last thing they want is you get season tickets. You maybe you split it with 4 or 5 different people. You only get to go to, so many games. I think there's 82 games in a regular season. So you have 41 home games. So if you split that with a certain amount of people, you want to watch your stars play. And your stars will want to play if they're making more money. A lot of this comes down to money. So, anyway, so I would pay them more. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think this is probably more along the lines of something we can do now that's really going to help us in the near future. This is probably more of a near future solution. I mean, this is the thing: is you got NBA players that are getting paid in some cases the supermax contract if they qualify, and I mean, I'm going to say something crazy, and maybe some people don't know this. Not everyone cares to be a star. It is. It's the way life is. Some people want to, do the same job for the rest of their life. Maybe they like that. Some people are going to move from business to business because, they just can't help but get eager for the next opportunity, right? Some of these guys, they grew up playing basketball. They knew they were talented at it, and they're now getting paid millions of dollars to play every year. Some of them don't need more than that, and that's okay.
Right.
That's fine, honestly. There's nothing wrong with that. Some people are very, they're happy with what they have. And some of these guys, they might get paid $50 million a year, and they're like, that's good enough for me, right? Yeah. And at that point, they're getting paid that money. What incentive do they have to play? If they don't care to be any better, what incentive do they have to play?
They currently have an incentive where they have to play a certain amount of games in order to receive awards.
They did just implement this.
They implemented this either this season or last season, and basically it forces the players to not take like sick days, basically, because if they miss a certain amount of games, they're ineligible for awards, they're ineligible for bonuses in their contracts, all this sort of stuff.
And it has already been making a difference. I'll get into a stat here a little bit later about that. So that is helping. So they're looking and seeing, hey, what can we do? But I do think if you incentivize them with more money, and you can do it based on positioning where you're at. If you're the 2018 versus the 2015, pay them a little bit more money. I mean, if I'm a player, I'm like, hey, if I can get a few more extra $1,000, maybe I'll play tonight, and maybe I'll try a little bit harder. And anyway,
that was a part of the load management restructure that the NBA did last year, right? Okay, yeah.
Yep.
I don't know. I just think ultimately, I don't see any reason why these contracts shouldn't have something in these lines. I think if you're an NBA owner, you guys probably need to have meetings, get this done, and make the NBA, make the NBA union come after you guys if that's what it takes. I mean, this is the problem. I mean, you look at the NFL; they're starting to give out guaranteed contracts now. There's not a single dime off, even if they don't play. I mean, you saw Deshaun Watson got a guaranteed deal, Lamar Jackson got a guaranteed deal. I mean, you see some of these contracts that are coming out in the NBA now. It's going to be hard to now go backwards and say, we're not going to do that anymore, and we're going to make you actually earn every bit of it.
Right.
I don't know. This is the difficult thing is we set a precedent now, and now we're trying to backstep from that. Do I think it's the most realistic way to get these guys to probably play almost every night? Yeah, probably. But, ultimately it's going to be up to the NBA to probably push that forward.
Yeah. So I would say, okay, so that's 2. Number 3, I think, shorten the NBA season.
Oh, this is my favorite one.
82 games. Now, this is a money thing, so I understand the NBA is going to want to make a lot of money, but I would shorten the season. One of the things that makes the NFL, now you can't do it like the NFL, but what makes the NFL so popular is you cannot lose 2 or 3 games in a row. I mean, you can, but it can almost derail your season unless you do something spectacular after that. 82 games is a long season, and they have to fit it in a certain amount of time. And one of the arguments that people have with load management is they have to do more back-to-back games. So they've tried to do a little bit of stuff to try to help that. But if you have more days off, players are more, they've recouped, they've healed a little bit better, and I think they're going to be more likely to be able to play more. So it takes away some of that. So anyway, I would do that. Cameron, what do you think about shortening the NBA?
I think that's a terrible idea because one of the things I look at, like the MLB, for instance.
Yes.
They have 180 games.
162 games.
Yeah.
And no one goes to them.
And that's the
not
problem.
True.
Oh,
that's not true.
But nobody pays attention. The major league
pay attention because we're not baseball fans.
Well, I love the Giants, but the Major League Baseball in general, it's a totally different enthusiastic thing. If you go to the NFL, you're going to go to the bathroom only during halftime. You don't want to miss a minute or a second of the game. In the NBA, you might be able to miss a few minutes because the game's longer. In Major League Baseball, you can take a nap. You can be gone for 2 or 3. The more games you play, it just decentivizes. You could lose 2 series in a row and no one even knows. I mean, and so at some point, if in the NBA, if you're 41-41, that would be, going 500. I don't need to know if I'm seeing that pattern here developing here. You can go and be 81-81 in the Major League Baseball. You're a mediocre team at that point. So I think you've established enough games. I just think shortening it, what it does is it creates, we have to win this game. We have to win this game. And the more games you play, you lose that. That's all.
Yeah.
That's my thought.
I mean, I think it's a supply and demand problem, right?
Yeah.
I mean, look at the MLB. To be able to keep up with the lack of demand, they've just supplied more.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get me wrong, I think the MLB has some really unique characteristics about it, right? You have all these games, which means almost any fan with any family can make it to at least one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have a really good opportunity for at least everyone to have an opportunity to watch MLB. That also being said, it's a really good family event, like you talked about. It's not like the NFL where you necessarily have people screaming at each other. It's a very relaxed, calm sporting event. You don't have people at each other's throats the whole entire time. You can take your kids and relax. You don't have to feel like you're yelling over to the top of people.
Yeah.
It's a very unique thing. I think if you look at the MLB, you look at the NBA, I think it looks exactly like inflation to me. I mean, ultimately, I think if you reduce the basketball games, I think this is the best choice, in my opinion. If you reduce the basketball games, let's go wild with it. Let's say down to, was the NFL...
It's 82. It's 80.
What's the NFL? 17 right now?
17, yeah.
Okay, multiply by 2, so that's
34.
34, okay? If you went down to 34...
Oh, gosh. I wouldn't do that low, but...
I wouldn't do that low
Yeah.
either, but I'm trying to just make a drastic statement, right?
Every game matters.
I would not go that low. I think that's too much. But just a drastic statement, you go down to 34 games, the amount of attention people are going to pay on these games.
It does. It increases.
I mean, people are going to go nuts.
Yeah.
People are going to be like, I got to get home and watch this basketball game.
One of the reasons the Final Four is so spectacular watch, single elimination.
Yeah.
One and done.
Yeah. I mean,
And so
here's
you're
the deal.
watching. You can't just, I'm not going to watch them. I'm going to watch them next game. You could lose them.
Every Eagles game, I don't miss them. I don't miss them.
Yeah.
I might be 5 minutes late to them, but I do not miss them. Okay. That being said, when I was a huge, when I was a diehard Miami Heat fan watching basketball all the time, I missed them all the time. Right. I probably watched, I don't know, 50 games.
Yeah.
Right. And I was a diehard fan. That's all I wanted to do was live, breathe basketball at that point in my life. I maybe watched 50 games. I still missed a bunch of them. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It's just difficult because I don't know. To me, the MLB and the NBA, they look like inflation. They just keep on adding more games, and the more you add games, the more the demand drops. Let's say you add 17 more games to the NBA, right? Your ticket costs are just going to go down, which is great and all for the people who want to go to the NBA games. But what it's not great for is everyone else who wants to actually enjoy the games and think they mean something, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess in my opinion, I would rather play in bigger stadiums where you can fit more people in the nosebleeds and less games and actually care about the games versus be able to be front row because there's 78 games and you could play.
So one of the things they did a long time ago is they made it 82 games. That way you play the other conference each twice, one home game, one away game. So you play, the Western Conference plays the Eastern Conference, and so you always get a C, and that's kind of fun, and that makes it exciting. You got to have a certain amount of games to be able to do it. So if you kept that, you would have to shorten games in conference, and they're not going to do this because it comes down to money. But I just think if you do shorten the game and the games are more valuable, I think you're going to get further. So I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say with number 4. So that's 3. Number 4, allow teams to get out of contracts. So not all guaranteed contracts like they are right now by poor performance. So in the NFL, you can get out of contracts. Now, so maybe you do it a little more like that. In the NBA, you're stuck and you pay everything no matter what. In the NFL, there's dead money, there's different things. It can be spread out over time. And so a player that often signs for 5 years oftentimes they'll only play 4 years,
Yeah.
or something like that. And so it at least allows for wiggle room if a player falls off a cliff really fast, and it doesn't hamstring a team as much. The NBA, you're stuck. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Let's hear Cameron's initial reaction. I think he gasped a little bit over there.
I worry because the problem you would have with that is that you would have teams jumping the gun on people and dropping people having one bad season. Now, I don't want to use this example because I know you don't like him, but I'm going to use him as an example because I do like him as a player. Lonzo Ball. Ball.
I like Lonzo Ball.
Oh, I thought you didn't like him.
No, I like Lonzo Ball. He just, wasn't the player that I thought.
Yeah.
I was hoping for.
Lonzo Ball has had some
Knees.
had a great first 2-3 seasons. I don't want to say great, but fairly good seasons.
Oh, yeah.
He was an above average player.
Yep.
And then he had some knee problems, and for the last 2 seasons he's been out.
Mm-hmm.
He's finally making a comeback, but if we were to implement what you said, teams would immediately drop him. And now he's out of a job for 2 years. Obviously, as NBA players, they make enough money to survive a couple years without making money, But the concept of it I apply that to myself. I got a job and then I hurt myself 3 weeks in and the company cut me.
Mm-hmm.
And just because they didn't want to wait the little time for me to get better and then come back and excel where I was going to, And so I feel like a lot of times if people get injured, they're just going to get cut immediately because then that cap space comes back, they can sign someone else.
So there's some clauses that say for injuries you can't do that.
Okay.
So that's a way to protect it because it's a good point. The other thing is what you're trying to do is protect if you sign somebody for 5 years and they fall off the cliff, that you're not hamstringing forever. You don't get rid of them after year 1 because if you look at the NFL contracts, year 1 they're making a ton, year 2 they're making a ton, year 3 they're and it's they get the guaranteed money all at the front. So you're not just signing a 5-year contract and getting rid of somebody at year 1,
Mm-hmm.
but if you're signing a 5-year contract, you might be able to get out of it the last year, or you might be able to spread that over a period of time. But
yeah, I think in the NFL, in most cases, you cut somebody, you're gonna have a dead cap number, but you can actually spread that dead cap number over years. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And so, there needs to be a fairness. I mean, people shouldn't be able to say, hey, like in the NFL, thanks for putting your life on the line. You just broke your neck and we're going to cut you. There shouldn't be that. That shouldn't happen. Or you blew out your knee and you're out. Thank you for what you're doing. So there does need to be a clause in there. But I just think if you sign somebody, there are players that sometimes you'll sign them and then they get their money and then Sean Kemp back in the day got a whole bunch of money and ballooned up and didn't try and now he's just making bank and he's not even trying to get in shape or nothing. And now you're stuck as a team and you can't get anybody. Nobody's going to want to come play with him because he was great. And now he's not a high flyer anymore. And so you got to have incentives for the players to say, I got to keep earning it to a certain degree. But you can't take advantage of the players. It's got to be a middle ground.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
No, I like the way the NFL structures. I think that could be a good idea. It's just be able to have dead cap numbers and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay, so here's one that I think has really hurt the NBA. This is just my own personal opinion. Don't allow players to drive the NBA politically and different things. I think so many people go to sports to get away from all the problems and struggles in life. They go and they want to watch teams. And if I want to get into political, I can have that political conversation no matter what the side is. So if they want to have discussions on their own, they do their own podcast, they have freedom to do that. That's when you do it. But not all over the NBA. I think they tried to do something good and they listened to the players and they were trying, I think, to follow something what they believed was right. But it only represented a percentage of people, and then you alienate the other. And just like if you did it the other way, you're going to alienate the other. So I would get rid of that, and I would just totally play the game. That's just my thing. And so,
Yeah. Let me say this. Before anyone freaks out and they're like, oh my gosh, you can't just put a muzzle on people.
no, you can still talk. Yeah.
I watch the same Philadelphia Eagles YouTube channel every single day. 2 of them, in fact, right? I know a lot about these players. I listen to all their post-conference or all their practice press conferences. I could not tell you a political leaning left, right, middle, or center on any of those players. And they come to the podium every single day. They talk, and I don't know. I don't care what you believe in necessarily. I think that sometimes it's good to, speak up for what you believe in. But for the most part, I don't watch the NFL because I care about what your beliefs are.
Right.
I watch because you're entertaining, and I want to be entertained. And honestly, in today's age, especially in 2024, politics is terrible.
Yeah. It divides families. It divides friends.
And no one necessarily wants to have to deal with that. They want to be able to sit back in a chair, relax, and watch a football game. I mean, or a basketball game. But it's just like,
right.
I don't know. I could invite almost anyone over to my house to watch an NBA basketball game, and I just want to be able to sit back and be like, not care about any of that.
Oh.
And I get what you're saying. Yes, people need to be able to have a voice in their own words, in their own way, shape, or form.
Yes.
Do that on your podcast. Do that on your own thing. You are more than free to say whatever you want.
Yep.
But try to keep the NBA. Try to remember that you might not agree with everyone.
Right.
And they might not agree with you. And that's okay.
Yeah.
We don't all need to agree on things. But we do need to remember this is something that is supposed to be fun for everyone and for everyone to enjoy.
Yep.
And I just think we really fell to the wayside in some of that stuff.
Yeah, and I think it personally hurt the NBA and the NFL and different things. I think if you look at attendance, it dropped off massively. You had people burning. We don't need to do that divide. It's just not necessary. And so individually, absolutely. I mean, we should allow people to have their freedom of speech and do their thing, but it shouldn't be like the NBA is representing a side, and that's what you don't want. You want to go there. I mean, one of the things I love about I can have a horrible day. It can be miserable, hard, whatever it is. I can go watch a game, and for a minute, I've forgotten about that. It takes you to a different place, and that's one of the great things about sports. And you're unified usually if you, as we've talked about before, are supporting a certain jersey and laundry. Mm-hmm. When you have a team and you like a team, you're all unified, even though you don't agree with all of our viewpoints on different social issues. But we're unified on one thing: I want this team to win.
Yep,
and that's what's fun.
Yep,
and so
absolutely.
Okay, so. Another one, that's top 5. Number 6, when they do replays, you get 60 seconds. The ref has 60 seconds. He's on the clock to review a play.
Yeah.
That's it. If he can't figure it out after 60 seconds, the play stands.
Yeah.
We don't need to sit there for 3 minutes. Now, if there's a problem with technology and they're not getting it, okay, but as soon as they can watch it, you got 60 seconds. And if it's like, rewind, I don't know, then you don't know, and let's go with what it was in the game, because the momentum in a game can change. I like replay. 60 seconds. That's my thought.
Yeah. I really like the implement of replay. I think it's helped out in a lot of many cases.
Yes.
I think the one thing that I get disgruntled about is, and this goes along with replay. Hopefully this isn't another topic of yours, because I might, intertwine here a little bit.
It's all right.
But the problem about replay that I don't like is it's just another timeout. I don't know. Every time you watch an NBA basketball game, it's like, can we take a timeout every 5 seconds?
No.
It's like, I'm going to watch them go up and down the court 4 times, and then it's going to be a commercial timeout. And then I'm going to watch them go up and down the court 4 times, and then it's going to be a coach's timeout.
Yeah.
And I'm going to watch them go up and down the court 4 times, and then it's going to be a replay timeout. And it's like, oh my God, I just feel like we're pausing the game at every 5 seconds. And don't get me wrong, I'm all about players being able to get a little rest in between. That's what makes them be able to be rejuvenated for the rest of the game, right? It's a hard sport. They're playing hard. That being said, the least amount of time that we can just stop the game.
I don't have this as one of my things, but I heard somebody say they wanted no timeouts in the last 2 minutes. which
Oh.
seems ridiculous.
Awful.
But I think the reason the person came up with the idea was they're tired of 6 timeouts being used every
Yeah.
15 seconds. But I think that's ridiculous because one of the things I think that is special is in a big game, you draw up a really cool play and you can advance and you can now with 1 second to go in the NBA, if you get the rebound immediately and call timeout or the ball's out of bounds, you call timeout and you get it at half court. Even with 1 second to go, you can get a shot off. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that rule, but I did hear that just because they didn't like the way the game stopped. My wife will always ask me to this day when I say, "Hey, I'll be there in 5 minutes," she'll always say, "Is that like NBA 5 minutes?" Because does that mean you're going to have like 4 full timeouts, and which means I'm going to be 15 minutes. So
Yeah.
anyway, all right. So this next one, I heard from, I think this was Van Gundy came up with this idea years ago, and he was mocked. I actually thought the idea was interesting, but he said, "Do not have players foul out." Now you can, yeah. So here's why. No other sport does it.
Yeah.
You can. So if you think about it, football holding penalty. You can have a second holding penalty. You have a third holding penalty. You can have 10 holding penalties. What happens? There's a penalty every time there's a penalty. So you are decentivized to do it. What you don't want now. I would probably not do that. I would probably add either 1 or 2 fouls to it. The purpose of why he was saying this, which I thought was interesting, what you do not want is you don't want a finals to come down and you have the Mavs and the Celtics and you have Luka's not in the game because of a couple questionable calls at the beginning of the game and he fouled out. That's the worst thing that could possibly happen. You don't have a Kobe or a LeBron or a whatever because of some ticky-tack fouls. No other sport does this, so why are they doing this in the NBA? Now, the argument could be that it makes, I guess, the NBA what the NBA is, but there are often times where games are altered because of foul problems. Maybe they don't foul out, but now they're having to take their star out too early because of foul problems. And so you just don't want to lose a championship because of sometimes there are calls that aren't even right calls.
Yeah. So if you would have brought this to me about a year ago, I probably would have been like, I'm kind of in for it, right? But I do think that they have in this playoff, like just this playoff series so far, in this year, I think they've been letting them play a lot harder than they have in the past. I don't know. I feel like, I don't know, what was it like the COVID year where the Lakers beat the Heat?
The bubble.
The bubble. Yeah, I remember watching those playoffs, and that was the first time I was kind of coming back to watching basketball again.
Mm-hmm.
There was a little period in there where I just kind of fell off, and I was like, I don't really want to watch anymore. And then I see my Miami Heat,
I fell off.
Yeah.
But yes.
I see the Miami Heat coming in there playing well. I'm like, oh, yeah, it's COVID bubble year, and I'm like, I'm going to watch again. I got more time on my hands. And I remember watching that playoff series, and it was like a wake-up call for me because I'm like, are you sure that's a foul? Because that doesn't look like a foul to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, it's just like every little tick-tack, every single thing was a foul. You couldn't even defend players. It was like, okay, this guy's just gonna bullhorn his way into the basket, and someone's gonna barely touch his hip. That's a foul, right? And they're like, okay, this guy just elbowed every single person on the way to the basket, but the guy touching his hip fouled him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it just didn't make any sense.
Right.
I didn't understand any of it. And then I think the NBA kind of thought, well, we're maybe just not letting these guys play hard enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I think from what I've seen the playoffs this year, I think they've actually done a pretty good job. I'm seeing a lot less of the ticky-tack fouls. It's a lot more of, okay, yeah, they probably deserved it. They're playing the game at a much higher level. The fouls they're calling in these games are always going to be more at a higher level than you would see in high school.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like in high school where you got to basically rip the guy's arm down to get a foul. It's different. I think they're calling things in a more respectable manner is what I would say. And I actually like where the playoffs is. I would like to implement that in the regular season. We'll see if they do that. I think the hard thing about having these guys play a little bit more of a, I guess what you'd say, more of aggressive, style basketball, is doing that for 82 games would probably be pretty hard on the players.
Right.
Yeah. But I really like what they're doing in the playoffs so far. They're making things a little bit more harder. You're seeing teams that are more defensive minded move far in the playoffs. You saw the Indiana Pacers move farther. They had pretty good defense going there before some of their guys were getting, injured and out. The Timberwolves, heavy defensive team. You saw them make it far in the playoffs. I think that was mostly because they just were all playing good defense, and you saw some of these more offensive-minded teams go, okay, they're letting us play a little bit harder. We haven't played like that before. Mm-hmm. Anyways, like I said, I like how they're reffing the playoffs now. Maybe implement that a little bit more in the regular season.
What about adding a foul or two, just so you don't change the dynamic, or would you keep it 6? Because I would change the 6, because I've seen too many times. I mean, I can think of finals after finals. I mean, there's so many different times where a bad call for my team or against my team. I've seen it, and it totally changed the dynamic. The Lakers, when they beat the Celtics, one of the best things I saw, Perkins fouled out, questionable. And I'd like to think that we'd have won anyway, but you don't know.
Yeah.
And I've seen it go the other way, and it's like it's just the worst thing. You want the best team to win.
Yeah.
You want the best team to win. And so even if you added one more, now I think they did this. They have 6 fouls, but there's 48 minutes in a playoff game, or in an NBA game. So I don't know. I hate the fact that the dynamic gets changed because of that. That's just my personal opinion, but anybody can have their own.
I think the hard thing is if you remove a cap in any way, shape, or form, the hard thing is it's just strategy for the basketball players, right? Mm-hmm. I'm going to attack so-and-so all night long. I'm going to try and get some defensive fouls on, right?
Yep.
And you can do that. Some of these players are more offensive focused. You can attack them more on the ball.
Absolutely.
Go more at their face, try to get them to draw some more fouls.
That's part of the strategy.
It's a part of the strategy for sure. Yeah. I mean, I see what you're saying. In the NFL, they don't do that. Any other sport, they don't really do that. They just penalize the team. I could see a world where you can make an argument saying that, like, let's say the fouls were more decentivized by points that you would get, and that would maybe make sense to not actually give the players, a little tally in a box for them. But I think it'd just be hard at this point in this time. I mean, it's just the NBA is so old at this point. That would be a pretty hard change for them.
It would be. And there's other things you can do if they get to a certain amount of fouls. You could have extra free throws, or you could, whatever. But Cameron, what are your thoughts on that? You wouldn't do that, but that's okay. Why would you not?
Because that's an awful idea. Because if you remove the cap on fouls,
yep,
you immediately increase the injury rate immediately, because there's no incentive to not foul. People will just be basically just taking other people out because.
But you have penalties. You do have penalties because
absolutely.
As soon as you foul, if you foul and you foul and you foul, then they go to the free throw line. So you're giving them free throws. So
I mean, there's still team fouls.
Yeah. But I mean, you just. If that's the case, like take a Shaq for example.
Yeah, that's
you just foul Shaq over and over and over and over again because he's not going to make his free throws.
So one of the rules that they've talked about doing for that, the hack a Shaq or whatever, is you give one free throw. It's a technical if you do that off the ball, and you get the ball back, and you don't have Shaq have to shoot it. You get your technical free throw shooter, so you can combat that.
Yeah, but then you would be calling technical fouls on everything because to do that.
It's called an intentional. So when the hack a Shack was really obvious because they just went up and just slapped him and they were telling the ref, "Hey, I'm fouling." So it's pretty obvious. Anyway, it's what the purpose of it is. I have seen. I mean, think of this. So you can't relate to this, Cameron, because your Kansas City Chiefs have been winning the Super Bowls. Mm-hmm. But just imagine, seriously, if they lost because of something that was a bad call that happened, and now Patrick Mahomes isn't able to play, or you have Chris Jones isn't able to play because they said he lined up offsides and he wasn't offsides for the second time, something like that. And that's the point of this, is you're trying to take away from specific moments in a game and you get your stars out, because what makes us stars make these games. And so you just want them on the field. That's all.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I have had that with last season with Kadarius Toney. He lost us a couple of games.
Oh yeah,
lining up offsides and throwing. Yeah. Right. Anyways, but I understand wanting to have the stars on the court, but then the only problem is then what. So,
and I'm not, just to be clear, I was saying Van Gundy said unlimited.
Yeah,
I'm not. I would do 1 or 2 more. So I'm not talking about 30 fouls, which I don't think a team would ever do anyway. But I'm talking about adding 1 or 2 more. So in the first quarter of Game 7 of a finals or something, you just don't all of a sudden have to take your main player out. But
What if it was fouls by quarter?
Do you think there's that? And then do
Yeah.
you think you should up the team fouls as well? So like once you get past 8, it goes to 3 shots.
you could do that, or 10 or something like that. Yeah, absolutely. You do want to decentivize people from just fouling, because you don't want a foul game.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's not the point. It's just more sometimes 2 players. What you love in a finals, in a game 7, for example, is you'll see players, they play totally different. So they're both diving and they're bouncing off each other. And sometimes when they're bouncing off each other, they have to call a foul. And they'll call a double foul or something. And so you'll see that more often. Worst thing in rules. Hey, great effort. We don't really know who fouled, but one of you has to be called for this. And unfortunately, you've had 1 legitimate foul and 2 quit. So you're on the bench for the next 12 minutes in a pivotal game. And so you just don't want to see that. And it's happened too many times, in my opinion. I've watched it too
What
many
if you
times.
decentivize hard fouls, right? And also do like a hard cap of like a number that's
Yeah, maybe it's only 7 fouls instead of 6 or 8. You can still foul out.
I mean,
I
make
wouldn't
it
do
like
Jeff Van Gundy's idea, but you at least give a little more wiggle room.
I mean, even
That's
if you
all.
said 8, if a guy gets 8 fouls, he's trying to foul out.
Yeah, you're not going to have usually 5 bad calls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing that they did add that I will say this season is they added the challenges in the NBA. You now can challenge foul calls
I love that.
and
Yes.
overturns and stuff. And
Yep.
if you lose it, you lose a timeout. If you win it,
Yeah.
you get that. You keep that timeout, which is cool.
Yeah.
So that incentivizes like saving a player basically. If they got a bad foul call,
Yeah.
that would put them out of the game.
Sure. Okay. So let's move on to the next one. And if you are listening to this, watching this, add your comments. I like it, I don't like it, or other ideas. So it'd be great. And maybe they'll figure some things out. This is one of my favorite ones, which think is a little bit interesting. Okay.
no.
It creates a little bit of interest, but I like this one. Let teams with higher seeds pick who they want to play. So imagine this. Okay. So I'll go way back. This is back years ago. You had the Houston Rockets won the championship. Then they got hurt. Then they got healthy right at the end. They came back and won the championship again. And you have teams right now, they're doing this every year. They're doing this. Teams will lose or win, and they do this specifically. We don't want to play them in the first round. We want to play them in the second round, so it gets back to the tanking type of thing.
Yeah.
That happens all the time. So, and it would also create, I think, more rivalry. If a number 1 seed says, I'm picking you. Now, you can't pick a 2, 3, or 4, but you have to pick a lower seed. So a 5, 6, 7, or 8 or something like that. If you pick, do you know the animosity that would create? Oh, you want us? Then you get rivalry again. So I like the idea of you're incentivized to be the higher seed. You get the home court advantage. You get to pick the team that you're playing. You create animosity, which right now they're all banana boat friends. And it's a totally unique idea, but I love it. So what are your thoughts?
I actually, I love this idea. Let me just say, logistically, it's probably not the easiest thing to pull off.
Yeah.
But because
you have to stay in the conference.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. But the problem about this is now you got to get a bunch of players to agree on who they want to actually play, which might be difficult. And then you got to be like, okay, who's the overall decision maker for the teams, right? So that might be difficult. I think logistically this might be hard to pull off, but I agree. It has been so annoying to hear about coaches and players saying, yeah, we're in the play-in game, but the team we're playing is pretty terrible. So we might just lose to them on purpose so we can not play the best team in the league. I mean, it's like when you have to hear someone who's on the cusp of the playoffs, not even in the playoffs, they're on the cusp of the playoffs. When you have to hear them be like, we might sandbag it so we don't have to play that team.
Right.
That is terrible.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
It is.
I mean, and then you have broadcasters, announcers, people talking, well, ladies and gentlemen, tonight you might not see them try very hard. I mean, they literally said that this year.
Yeah.
They literally said that this year. You might not see them actually put in any effort tonight because they might actually want to not play the Denver Nuggets, who's the first seed. It's like,
it's not a good matchup. And you think these guys are the elite athletes with the competitive edge that they have. How insulting is it when a team says, we want to pick you. We want to play you.
yeah.
So anyway, and it also could make a difference. I mean, teams might pick like, I don't know, like you might have a team on the West Coast and they might say, we want to pick that team just because we don't want to travel.
Yeah.
And so it might be an advantage because they think, hey, we're going to go far into playoffs. And so I'd rather have shorter distances. So there's all sorts of strategies with it. I don't know. So anyway, it's a unique thought. It will never happen. But I thought the idea, I'm wanting to create rivalries. I used to love it when the NBA used to. In the regular season, I grew up as a kid watching fight after fight after fight. They hated each other. And so what it does as a fan is it gets you at just a different level of your enthusiasm and also your hatred. So my 9th, 9 of 10, okay? 2 more. I saw this happen in the NBA. And they changed it. They've changed the 3-point distance a few times, and it does change the game drastically. I would move the 3-point line out a little bit more. I think you have big guys. It is completely changed the game. And so centers and all that down low, the game is now every player shoots 3-pointers. And so it's a game around the perimeter, and you don't go inside, outside. And so if you go outside further, it lowers the percentage. They've done the stats and said over a period of game, if you shoot 40% from the 3-point line and you shoot 50% from twos, shoot threes because you will score more points. The math just plays it out. So teams are shooting threes and threes. If you extend it, players like Steph Curry and whatnot won't make as many, but they'll stand out even more. They'll even be more valuable because you will shoot less of them, and the teams, and so that played out. The stats were overwhelming. The NBA moved the 3-point line in years ago to try to increase scoring, and it totally changed the game. Then when they moved it back out, and so what it does is there's not a 5 now. Everybody's just a 1. So anyway, I would do that, and I think twos become a lot more valuable. Mid-range jump is not much of a thing anymore in the NBA. It's actually discouraged. I go in coaching, people will say, why do you shoot that shot? That's the dumbest shot you can possibly shoot. So now it's layup or it's 3-point line. If you extend it, the floor is now spread. And so this is what I also liked about the old NBA, but Kyrie Irving and those type of moves, when the court is now spread, you have more room to work. And so it's a different type of game. When the 3-point line is in, everything is more crowded, and it's just you just have more perimeter. So anyway, an idea. Different people have different thoughts. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, honestly, when you first told me this one, I actually hated it, to be honest with you. I was like, what do you want, just put a 4-point line in there too? Anyways, now that I'm thinking about it, though, this is, once again, logistically, I think it's difficult to pull off. I mean, if you extend the 3-point line, are you just going to get rid of the corner 3 at that point? Is that what you would say?
No, so the NBA did it. This is the way they used to do it, is so they kept the width stayed the same.
Okay.
So people would try. The reason that is still there is because there's not a lot of room from out of bounds to the 3-point line.
Correct.
So you have to have your feet almost perfectly in that spot. So it's still a technique and difficult there. But outside, they moved it in. It changed the game drastically.
So if you can keep the corner 3 logistically,
yeah,
and not get rid of that, because I think you got rid of that, that'd probably be difficult.
Right.
'Cause that's a big part of the game.
You're not going to widen the court.
Yeah, you're not going to widen the court. I don't know. I think you could probably give it some test runs and see how it goes.
Yeah.
This is the difficult thing. I get what you're saying. I mean, the problem that you have right now is your best basketball players in the NBA, a lot of times they're just big guys that can shoot threes now.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem is you get your high flyers. They only last a couple of years because they blow out their knees eventually. Your Anthony Edwards, I hope he has a great long career, but most likely he's going to be toasted in the next 2 to 3 years.
What?
He'll probably fly high for the next couple of years. Listen.
Awful take.
Oh,
I like him.
Oh my gosh. Listen, hear me out.
I hope he makes it.
Look at everyone else, dude. I mean, gosh, you just see all these guys. The people who jump high are dunk masters. They don't last.
Vince Carter played for like
So he's 40.
16 seasons.
Oh, well,
But for I know what you're saying. For the most part, you're pounding your body.
to be fair, Vince Carter didn't dunk for the last 10
Yes,
years.
he did.
He was not. He was not
Yes,
the
he
same player.
was.
No. The Vince Carter on the Raptors was not the same player. Not the same.
No, he had the coolest dunk
Yeah, he did.
in what was it, the Olympics or something?
No,
he
he's a
dunked.
slam dunk contest.
No. He dunked over a 7-footer. I think it was in the Olympics.
Oh,
and I
yes,
don't
that is
remember.
correct.
It's like that was insane.
Yeah.
That was insane. But anyway, we're digressing.
Anyways, we're digressing. All I'm saying is the guys that are performing really well right now are a lot of the big guys that just shoot threes. And I don't know. A part of me thinks it's kind of fixing itself. You are seeing a little bit of the big guys that don't shoot threes come back a little bit. You have your standouts, But I don't know.
Well, it changes the game massively. So it's not an inside-outside game. It's a perimeter game. And there can be good and bad with that. It also, for blocking out, for techniques of that kind of stuff, it all changes. Now it's there's so many more misses than there used to be because you're shooting further away. And now it's fortune a little bit more in, when you're shooting this far away, the ball's going to bounce a certain way and you don't know. You haven't any idea. So bigs, I think it's drastically, it's hard to be a big and be a power player and have an effect on the game. They used to be where you used to have 3-point shooters made a big difference and you had posts make a difference. So anyway, it's just a thought, and it makes the 3-point more valuable when it's closer in. It's not as hard, and I think it's just a little bit easier. It's all in personality. I would personally move it back a foot or two, and I think it opens up space. So
A foot would definitely be a lot.
yeah.
I mean,
well, they made pretty drastic difference. They've done this in the NBA. They moved it.
Yeah.
They went from no 3-point line. There wasn't a 3-pointer. They put it in, which was a great idea, and then they had it back, and then they moved it up, and then so they're moving it around. So, Cameron, what are your thoughts? You like the 3-point line the way it is?
Well, I just don't see moving the 3-point line as doing anything, because if you watch players right now that are consistently making threes, they're consistently like 1, 2, 3 feet back off the line. You can consistently see players hitting shots from basically the logo right now. And so pushing that 3-point line back will do nothing but like change what they do in practice.
Yeah, but don't you think that's a spacing thing?
Yeah, you have data that shows different than that. And I think what people are doing is they're playing defense on the 3-point line. And so
because
people
you have to meet people there, or
But-
else they're just going to shoot it right in your face.
right, but if you extend the 3-point line out, you're going to extend the defense a little bit more, and it creates more spacing, and it just creates more cuts, and all. The total game is just different. I think instead of perimeter, it's perimeter. It's maybe dribble out, throw out, that kind of stuff. So you have a lot more missed shots in the NBA right now. You don't have the same penetration. You don't have a down low game. You don't have a big and a guard. Now what you have is guard, and there's advantages to that, but there's also disadvantages. And every foot back you move it will change the way the defense is played, and they're not going to be 3 feet behind the 3-point line if you move it back a foot.
I don't know. I don't think we're going to get back to the like conventional basketball where it was like a post player,
Back
and
to the
a
basket.
high post player, and then a corner 3, and then a distributor, and then the point guard who dribble. Like, we're not going to get back to that, because you have kids these days that watch these NBA players that are 6'7" as a point guard and think to myself, when I was in high school playing basketball and I got put at a post position at 6 feet tall, that bothered me, because I'm thinking to myself, no one in a competitive sense at 6 foot is playing post. I need to get these different skills, And so instead of keeping my game where it was with just like learning how to post up and, you know, hook shots and like that sort of stuff, I expanded my game. And I think everyone in the NBA is doing that, because that way you can't keep them in one spot.
Yeah.
You can't let the big guy sit on the corner because he can hit a three.
Yeah.
And you can't let the 6'7" point guard down in the post because he can do some damage down there. You know, he's got those moves. And so every single player is versatile, and every single player can do everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so the concept of moving the 3-point back, I don't think would do anything except maybe spread it out. And even then, you're just going to have different players doing ISOs. You're not going to get ball movement. You're just going to be like you were saying, Kyrie, who can just now work. Now he just has more room to work by himself.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
And then it's just going to turn into like even more of a highlight tape. There's not going to if anything, you need to condense, because then you're forced to move the ball around, because then you have no room. You can't go to the left because there's a guy right here. You can't go to the right because you can't do this crazy stuff that they're doing because you don't have room. And then that also pushes the ball because there'll be more steals. That'll push the tempo. You'll have a steal at the top of the key, and now they're down there, and you're running down there, and now you got to run. You know, it just pushes the ball. I think expanding the court will just like make the game so much slower.
Yeah, it does. It does. And so there's advantages and there's disadvantages to it. It also creates a situation where it's harder to double team. When you have the 3-point line out further, when you start moving it in, it's easier to double your stars. And then now, so if you're wanting your Rodmans, your Batman and Robin, if you're wanting your Robins to have a bigger role, then that's a good thing. It all depends on what you're wanting. If you want your stars to be your stars, it's easier to guard your stars when the 3-point line is in a certain. So it all depends on what you, and they're good points. I mean, everybody has a good point. And so anyway, let's move on to 10. I would give incentives to players. Now they have changed some things, but I would give incentives to players that play over 90% of their games. Mm-hmm. I would give on top bonuses on top of their salaries. Right now, I'll tell you, so in 2021-22, there were only 5 players that played 82 games, full season. Okay. In 91-92, there was 53. Wow. So it went from 53 down to 5. In the same year, 21-22, 80 games or more, only 13 played. In 21-22, in 91-92, 105 played.
Holy smokes!
So everything has changed. 80%. This is a big one, okay? And they have done some things that have tried to change this. Of teams that were players that were all-stars that have played 80 plus games in 21-22, 0.
Wow.
In 21-22, in 91-92. 14 all-stars played. So load management is happening significantly, okay? So that's this 1 year. This was a 20-year gap. Now, this past year, because of some of the things they've done, they had 17 players play 82 games.
All-stars?
Not all-stars, just 17 overall. Okay. So it's they recognize that this is a problem, and they're trying to correct it, and I think they're doing some good things. But, you know, when you're a fan, there's kids and families that can afford one game, and they might afford one game in 3 years. You know, the budget is hard to get into a game. And so when you go and your player's not playing, they have a rule now. I think whatever it is, it's something that you can only rest one star so many times. The fact that they have to put that in is actually sad for fans, because Anthony Edwards said it. They might only have one chance to watch me play, and I'm going to play. And I think that's awesome, and that's more rare than unique. And so you have to incentivize the players to do it. If money is what it takes, there's trillions of dollars in these sporting events. I would incentivize 90% of the games, you get a bonus. That's what I would do. And it doesn't count against the cap. It's a bonus on top of your salary.
Yeah, and they could just easily structure it in a way of a percentage. You know, whatever you're getting paid. Let's say you're getting paid $80 million, 5% on whatever that is, right? Yeah. And they don't count it towards the cap. Obviously, that money's got to come from somewhere, so they're gonna have to figure that out.
Yeah.
But they shouldn't count it towards the cap, and they should be paying these guys to be showing up for basketball games.
Yeah. I mean, so think about this. There are people. So I went to a game. I was saying earlier. I went to a game. You can spend thousands of dollars for 2 tickets.
Oh yeah, I spent $2,000 for me and Grace to go to the Warriors game.
Yeah.
And Steph Curry and Clay didn't play.
I mean, that's absurd.
Yeah.
And that happens. That's not rare anymore. It's frequent that big players are missing games all the time. I mean, Kawhi Leonard. I mean, I would hate to be a Kawhi Leonard fan. You have to buy 10 tickets, and no, I'm going to get to watch him 3 times.
Yeah.
I mean, he just misses so much time, and so I would do something. I would try to change that, and I would try to change it right away. The fact that the top 7 players of the Lakers were not playing because they were tanking. Or there's load management happening. I think it's just sad, and I think it is. You are getting paid, and I think they're forgetting this. They are getting paid because they are entertaining people, and the people paying them. Yes, it's the NBA, but it's the people coming to watch the games are the only. If nobody watched, the whole thing falls apart. And so I think it's honorable. I know this: if I'm sick. If I'm truly sick at a typical job, I might get paid, right? You can get paid for that. But if I say, I ain't showing, I'm just not showing, I'm not getting paid, right? In the NBA, you can just say, I'm going to take this week off. And they're getting paid $30 million a year.
Yeah.
I just think it's ridiculous. So, Cameron, what do you have to say?
I don't necessarily have, and maybe we should wait to talk about this, but I have what I think would be the best solution to get players to play games.
Go for it. Share it.
So most of these players have big guaranteed contracts. No matter how many games they play, they get all their money.
Yep.
They have incentives on top of that, which usually they're like not big enough to like, if they weren't to get those incentives, it wouldn't matter. What I would change is make the guaranteed contracts minuscule, make them almost nothing, and incentivize every single game. Every game that you play, you get a certain percentage of your full contract. So they get a full contract that they're told this is how much money you could get this season.
Okay,
This is how much money you're guaranteed. Each game you play, if you play all 82 games, this is how much money you make. If you make the playoffs, you get even more.
Bring back game checks.
But if you don't, yeah, exactly. Game checks, basically. If you don't play all 82 games, say you play 75% of the season, well, you only get 75% of your check.
What happens if you're injured, though?
That's different. That's like it would
They're
be
like legitimate reasons.
Paid time off.
Right.
Basically.
Right.
So but if you were just to say I don't really want to play, then you don't get that game.
Yeah. And that's what I was trying to do with the 90%, but you could do it per game. That's another alternative to it. So a lot of these guys will get, I mean, people don't realize what they're making. $100,000 a game in 82 games, that's happening. That's happening all over. So if you think of these guys,
that's a low end player.
Exactly. But if you do what you're talking about, and you say you're not going to make $100,000 to take a night off, you're like, I think I'll play. You know what I mean? And they probably would do that. They probably would be more incentivized to play.
If you think about the contracts that people are getting right now, it's more like
$300,000 a game.
No, it's kind of
so 50. If you think $50 million, okay, and if it's 82 games, and you got let's say $1 million, that'd be 82 million. So you're looking at a lot of these players are $500,000 a game.
Yeah.
So that's why, so that idea is a good idea, because all of a sudden you're like, I could probably go out there for 30 minutes for $450,000. Maybe I'll play. And I like the idea. Now, how do you do this? Because all a team has to do is say shoulder injury, because people are sore all the time. So they'd have to somehow figure out how to monitor it correctly so people don't lie.
Well, you just make less money.
Yeah.
If you are injured. That's the thing.
Maybe you get a percentage of.
Yeah, so instead of making 500,000, you make like 3 or 2. Yeah. Because you're still getting money. You're still getting more money than anyone should ever make in one day. Yeah. But you're not getting as much as you might get.
Yeah.
I think that's good, because then it helps you draw the line between someone who's just faking injury and who's actually injured.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just like in the union, if there's no work to be had, they still get paid 50% of their paycheck.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you could do something similar where
Yeah.
if you get paid $300,000 a game, instead you get $150,000 a game.
Just unionize the NBA.
Just unionize it, baby.
Well, they kind of are.
They are.
So, all right. So anyway, we've got some ideas. It was good talking with you guys. So we're trying to help fix the NBA. We want to try to help. That's what we're all about. We're trying to make things more appealing. And anyway, if you like what you've heard, please subscribe, share this, hit the like button. Please add comments. If you have other ideas or if any of these ideas you like, please add comments because we do read them and we like to see what you have to say. But thank you guys for joining us, and hopefully the NBA is watching and maybe they'll make some changes in the future. Thank you.